welcome to Crash Course, the final live episode. I'm so glad that you guys are here. Are you guys shocked that we started on time? I'm shocked. I am shocked, but we are starting right on the dot at 4 o'clock. I already saw that some people are in the chat and you guys were waiting for us. Thank you guys for visiting, especially Vague. It seems like Vague Editor was here at 1 p.m. and also at 4 p.m. So thank you guys. Yes, today's live time is a little bit later than usual, but I'm glad that you guys could make it. And if you're watching this in post, no worries. Let us know what you thought about the episode in our forums, but we are really, really happy and glad you're here. With me, I have one of the most smartest and talented people I know. Seriously, it's Joe. Hi, everyone. Say hey to Joe.
Howdy. How are you doing?
How are you feeling today, Joe?
I'm feeling well. I'm excited.
Wow, we have some familiar names in the chat. Florentia's here. Joe, another Joe is here. Joe Ogaga is saying, "Hello, guys. Good evening. Am happy to be here with a big heart." Haley Capods is saying, "Only listening to the same 10 songs." Ooh, this is referring to the poll that we have going. It says, "Would you rather, for the rest of your life, only listen to the same 10 songs, or would you only watch the same 5 movies?" So put in your votes. Joe, I'm also going to ask you, so think about your answer. But Haley
Thinking
is
about it.
saying, only listening to the same 10 songs would mean no new music. I can't live without my 5,000 song playlist. I think I would also lean more towards the songs because I need to have my cleaning song. I need to have my get ready with me songs, especially when I'm going out for a night out and I have my gal friends here and we need to have a get ready song to hype us up. So
I gotta
I
have my hiking music, my workout song.
Yes.
Mhm.
You guys know Joe, if you follow Joe on TikTok, they post a lot of like, "Hey, I'm going on my daily stroll walk," and give us an amazing insight about projects, about about their life, and just overall perspective. I learned so much from it because you talk everything from like, "Oh, these are my favorite bands and I think they've changed," or "This is the new project I'm working on." So it's so fun to watch them.
Yeah, I mean that's my thinking as far as content creation in general is like just give up yourself, right? Like
Mhm.
it's I only talk about the things that I'm interested in talking about, and
Mhm.
there's people that connect with me and people that don't, and
Mhm.
we'll find each other. So
Mhm. I think actually, even before I started streaming at all, one of the first people I've seen that I know like closely that streamed was Joe, and I went on their like TikTok live, and they were talking to me, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, is this what live stream is?" So I would owe maybe 5% of my live success to you, Joe.
it's like full circle now.
Yeah, it is a full circle moment. But Florentia is very excited to see you. They're saying the
Hello.
wrecking ball with 5 exclamation marks, and Joe with like 5 E's. So it's clear that Florentia is excited to see you. Well, guys, thank you so much for being here. Joe, could you introduce yourself?
Sure. I mean, you would think I would have prepared for this, but I really don't even know what to say. I guess
Uh-huh.
I'm a software engineer. I'm
Mm-hmm.
an effect creator. I've been making effects since the public beta started, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, which what was that 2 years ago now?
Time flies. Time flies.
And I've been making video games and software and physical games and puzzles and stuff for a very long time in my life. So, of course, as soon as I saw that there was a way to develop effects, I was like trying to get on the list. I was trying to get in there,
Uh-huh.
and so that's a little bit. I mean, that's the very very short version of why I do what I do. I think.
Uh-huh. And this is Joe's TikTok channel. So if you guys haven't already followed them, definitely go and give a follow. They have so many iconic effects. I don't even know where to start. My personal favorite, and the one that I saw and was like, is this person real? Like, is this even possible? Was the dungeon crawler effect. And this was done back when there was no array system, I believe, in Effect House. And it was like very, very beginning. I didn't even heard about Effect House at this time. But how did you make this? Like, what went through your head when you're like, I'm going to make this game on a system that has no arrays? Like, how is that even possible with like
Yeah,
5 megabyte?
yeah. I mean, it was, you know, in general, my thinking when I was making effects, and you can see I don't make effects constantly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't tend to go back to the same well over and over. My when you look at that list of effects, they're kind of sporadic and they're kind of unusual. I jump from place to place. And this was one where I was like, I want to have a dungeon crawler style game, like a Doom style game. This is before anyone had tried to make Doom. I know someone has made
Yes.
Doom,
Yes.
but I thought I want to have the experience of playing through a dungeon game in here. I want it to randomly generate the maze. I want it to have a progression as you go through. I want it to feel like you accomplish something when you've beaten it. And how are you going to do that in this platform that barely has any data structures or anything yet? Well, you have to think in terms of the constraints. You have to think about people made games like this on the Atari 2600 and on old mainframe systems that had even less memory. So obviously there's some way that you can do something. And so you just have to get clever and work within the realm of what you have there. And like one thing I would say specifically about this effect is like if you were to sit down and try to make this in like Unity or Unreal or whatever, some modern language or framework, you're probably going to literally write code or visually drag around scripting code that is laying out 3D objects for the entire maze. But we didn't have any way to do that in Effect House. I think we probably still don't have a way to do that programmatically.
Yeah.
Uh, I haven't been keeping up with the latest developments, so if I speak incorrectly, always correct me. But I thought to myself, okay, if I can't lay out 64 rooms in 3D space programmatically, how can I pretend that I did that? How can I fake that? And the answer is usually we encode it in a way. We make bits of information in memory that represent it, and then we use a much more limited set of pieces to display it and act like it's there. And so what you have in that effect is actually one room. You're in one room with one room on each side of it. So it's really 5 rooms that have been rendered, and you're in the center of a room. And when you move, you walk to the edge of the room, and then you teleport back to the beginning of the room and continue walking into the center. And when that
Wow.
teleportation happens, we look at the information that's in memory and say, okay, we got to repaint all the walls to match where you're going now,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's the trick. It's you're never really going anywhere. It's like if you've seen those videos that are coming out now where people are experimenting with these VR treadmills and they're walking, but they're in the same place the
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
time.
yeah.
That's kind of what happens in here. You walk halfway and then you jump back, and at the same time that you jump, it changes the room to match the one that you were walking into.
Oh. So are you actually moving at all in the Z
You
direction?
are.
Okay.
You're moving in that one room.
Uh-huh.
And so as you walk halfway and you get to that doorway, now you're suddenly jumping back into the opposite doorway of where you are, and then continue the
That's
rest of your walk
crazy. Guys, we
where
didn't
you were.
even talk about what today's lesson's gonna be, but we just got a in deep detail about like how this crazy effect was built. I have two questions for you. Number one, it seems like you have a lot of like software background, computer science. So one question about that, but number two, the more fun one, it seems like you're very geeky. I love D&D,
Absolutely.
and I also know that you have a more recent effect that converts you into a legendary AI booster pack. So, where does all of your love for these kind of things come from?
So I think I can admit here, this is obviously inspired by Magic the Gathering. I think we can see. I didn't use the name in the effect because I wanted it to sound somewhat generic. But I played Magic the Gathering when it was brand new. I was in high school. Actually, I guess I was technically in middle school, maybe when Magic started to come out in alpha. But in high school was when it was actually available to people.
Mm-hmm.
And my friends and I were all like, what is this new game? And everyone was crazy about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I played Magic in the olden days, and then Magic is still around today, and it's wild to me. So, and it's more popular than ever in some ways. And so I thought, I want to do something with the AI art effects. I want to generate something. I always was seeing examples of fantasy, and I was like, this. Some of this reminds me of the artwork you would see on these cards, and I wanted it to be something. Look, every time I make an effect, it has a specific intended
Mm-hmm.
audience. Let's put it that way. I don't generally make stuff that is super widely appreciable, I guess. And so my thinking with that is when this nails the absolute
Mm-hmm.
correct audience member,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be like, this is the best thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And if I make that effect bring just one person that level of joy, that's a success for me.
I definitely think so, and you've succeeded because right now in the comments section, Haley Kapaz is saying Joe's technical effects was what inspired me to start creating technical effects and get back into programming again. I remember watching them in awe when I was a newbie in Effect House. What?
Thank
That's
you,
so
Haley.
sweet.
I've watched Haley come up through Effect House as well, and
Uh huh.
I think that that's awesome to see. I love seeing people start hitting things out of the park over as they get more used to it, get their feet wet. I mean, I remember that with you. Before you were even with TikTok, you just
Uh
had a meteoric rise of like you went from I want to do this to like making some of the coolest
huh.
effects that I had ever seen, and I thought that was
Guys,
great.
for those of you who don't know, I also started out as an effect creator, and I was making effects. And even before I started working at TikTok, me and Joe connected, and we were sharing our secret trades. Like, hey, how did you make that? And then they would give me something, I would give them something, and it was so fun. And what a amazing relationship to be in. So
Mhm.
perfect. And I want to talk a little bit more about your computer science background. Is it on the same note? Did you find it interesting, or was it popular at the time, or how did you get started?
I've been programming since I was a kid, right? So, I mean, basically, I've been programming for about. We can censor this in post. I've been programming for about 40 years now, almost.
Uh huh.
Okay, and it's just something that's always appealed to me. I just
Mm-hmm.
have always thought it was awesome, and I think that there's nothing quite uh, as close to wizardry
That
is really
is
all I can say,
so
right?
true. So
So,
true. Especially like when you combine it with something like AR, where you take existing reality and then you can put images on top of it. You can roll an imaginary dice or move in space or alter your face. It's like
yeah,
so crazy.
you're transmuting reality by just
Yes.
in my case, usually by typing some code, but in Effect House, I had to learn to drag things around instead
Yeah,
of typing.
I was gonna ask you a little bit more about that because I love how we share like this magical wonder of like, oh, making stuff in digital because that's where I also get my username Magical Celery from because I also felt like, wow, this is so crazy, this is magical, and that's how I was like, okay, people call me Celery because Celine, and then magical. So I was like, oh, that's so fun, and I love how you also feel like this wanderlust wizard feeling. But like, tell me more. How was your experience transferring your extensive computer science knowledge into Effect House with visual scripting?
It's an interesting thing to me. Like I alluded to when talking about the dungeon crawler, it's such a limited platform in some
Mm-hmm.
ways, right? You have a set of the things that you can do, and you have a limited amount of memory. And both of those things have increased over the past 2 years, right? Obviously, it gets more powerful with every release. They've even given us more space for assets and stuff, which is wonderful. But at its core, there are constraints there
Mm-hmm.
because you are working within an existing platform. You're building effects that have to fit into a specific context, which
Mhm.
is to say video, like video recording. Like I can't go in there and make a spreadsheet, right? Like that doesn't make sense. I'm making an effect.
But I heard that today you might tell us some of your best tips on how you were able to not get around it, I guess, but like overcome the system and create crazy effects. So we'll
I
get
will
into
I will
that.
talk about some of those for sure. But one
Yeah.
thing I do want to say is like I compare it when you ask me that I compare it to developing games on older systems again. Like I said, the
Yes.
Atari 2600, and I would love to show you a small thing
Of
if I
course,
could.
of course.
That's not in Effect House, but
Mhm.
this is a different piece of software. And so there's this virtual console called the Pico 8. And I'm sorry, the window is not very big because Pico 8 is 128 by 128 pixel rendering.
Oh.
And so you can write code in here to make video games or demos or whatnot. And it's constrained, it's written in Lua, it's all typing code. But the point that I wanted to share is the parallel that I find when doing this old style of coding with Effect House. And so if I were to like load up in here, for instance, there's a little demo someone made. Um, this demo, 278 characters, they wrote code, small enough code to fit into a tweet that does all of this.
Wow.
And that's sort of the whole idea. It's similar to the demo scene as well, which is to say there are people writing code for old retro computing systems where they fit the code into a very small amount of memory and amount of lines of code, but they do very outlandish things with graphics and even with sound. And
Mhm.
so it's that is to me as close as you get to what is happening now in modern times with Effect House, where
Mhm.
I have these very limited resources, and in a way, the constraints are what encourage me to do exciting things because
Mm.
I'm interested in seeing with Dungeon Crawler. The question was first, before even building the whole game, the very first question was, can I generate a maze randomly in Effect House? Forget about showing the walls or monsters or even having a game. I didn't even know if I was going to be able to write a maze generation algorithm in Effect House. And that's usually where I start with one of these effects. I have an idea for something that's going to be the hardest technical piece, and then I do a proof of concept in Effect House to see, can I make the logic to do this? And if it works, then
Mm.
that encourages me to go a little further.
Uh-huh.
And so like with Dungeon Crawler, it was like, okay, I'm able to make a dungeon. Now can I display the map of the randomly made dungeon?
Yeah, yeah.
Now can I display the walls? Now can I start spawning random monsters and invent, stats and stuff like that? So it builds up from small to big as you go.
That's definitely a good way to break up a big project. See if the main core mechanics of what you want to create is feasible and then making it work by adding other things.
Hmm.
Sounds good. So I want to also talk a little bit about your collaboration project. You
Yes.
have a channel named Weird Talk Union. Let me see if I can find it and bring it up. But I want to hear more about how this came to be because I
So we're
think
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
this is a fantastic I think idea and I want to know how it sprung.
Weird Talk Union was this thing that existed in my head for quite a while because for my first year or so on TikTok, um, not right away, but like for about a while, let's say, I was doing nightly co-lives. All right, I have a friend on TikTok named Josh who goes and live streams every night, and I would join him for co-lives, and then we would have other people coming in there, and so we were all kind of weirdos. We're all geeks. We're all into weird stuff, and so I had this concept in my mind of like there should be like a group. Why don't we unionize, so to speak? But like have like the weird talk union is just basically a group of weird TikTokers, and that ended up kind of mutating into this idea of, well, let's do that for effect development. And there's no one that I know that makes weirder effects than FilterDank. I absolutely love.
That's one great way to put it. Yes.
But I absolutely love everything FilterDank makes. I always was a fan from the first time I started seeing those effects. And I really had the idea of what if I collaborated with someone and made some effects. And, FilterDank was basically the first person I thought of for that, especially
Mm.
because FilterDank's strengths, from my perspective, are around strange ideas, first of all, obviously, right? Coming up with an oddball idea, but also modeling, like making the 3D models and animations, pulling that together, which
Uh-huh.
is, I can do that stuff, but I'm not good at it, right? Like I can do anything that I need to do for an effect if I have enough time and enough willpower. I will go learn what to do. I had to learn Blender. If you've ever seen the effect that I made, one of the effects I made for the TIFF competition
Uh-huh.
has a bunch of screen transitions, and one of them folds up the screen like a paper airplane and makes it fly away.
Mm.
I had to learn Blender and joints and animations to do
Uh-huh.
that. I had never used it before that. But someone who's using it every day can be a lot faster and a lot better at it than me. And
Mm-hmm.
so I thought, let me pair up with someone who has obviously similarly weird sensibilities to me, where our skill sets can complement each other's, and we could probably make some amazing things.
Uh-huh.
And so together we made a couple of effects, that were Weird Talk effects that aren't on the Weird Talk account, that we put on our own accounts before we made the microware. So we made some Young Gravy related effects, that I thought would be at least a little more popular than they were, but like we were really making them for ourselves more than anyone. And then we decided to work on Weird Talk microware because we had both had ideas of making an effect similar to WarioWare style micro games.
Oh. So actually, I do have a surprise video for all of you guys from Filter Dank himself. So I'm gonna load up that video, and I want to hear also from Filter Dank who
This will be my
he
first
is.
time seeing this video.
Yes, so we're all watching this together in real time, guys. So
What's going on, everybody? I'm Zach. I go by Filter Dank on TikTok. I'm a filter artist, and I also make up one half of the Weird Talk crew. My background is not in 3D at all. My background really is in trying to make people laugh and trying to make the craziest things I possibly can on the internet, and they so happen to be through filters. My proudest moment was making a viral TikTok filter with Post Malone's face, and I kind of dankified it. It ended up blowing up in Southeast Asia and got like 2 billion views. My second proudest moment was winning an Archie Award with our effect, which you're going to be hearing about today. That was cool. It was pretty cool. Pretty cool to see something that weird win a huge award. Yes, what we did was we decided to take WarioWare and throw it into a TikTok filter. Some of the games are inspired by that. Some of the games are new and we kind of came up with. We just really try to make the game as simple as possible in that respect. Well, I would say all the assets were pretty challenging because we had to make something that tried to look good and also fit into the 4 megabyte limit that we had at the time. Making the asset, throwing it in the game, testing it out, seeing where we were at with space, and then just going back and tweaking that. One of the key lessons I learned was just put it out. Just, it doesn't need to be perfect. Every little detail doesn't need to be ironed out. Like, we're doing this for fun. This wasn't for a big brand or a paid thing. Like, we're just trying to have fun. Yeah, we're super pumped because we're working on a new game for one of the new challenges. Yeah, we're looking forward to posting it. I do use a little bit of visual scripting. I'm not an expert. Whenever I'm making like a weird meme character filter, I love to play with the camera and move it around the scene, apply the user's face in some capacity. And I just keep it simple with that. Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Zach. I go by Filter Dank on TikTok.
Yeah, so that was the video, and it's as colorful and iconic as Zach himself. But it was so fun to also hear the perspectives. Did you mention that you guys are working on another effect together, or
Spoilers.
spoiler alert, guys?
Yeah. Well, we saw that there is a game contest going on right now, a game effect
Yes, yes,
contest.
the game jam. Mm-hmm.
And it's like, how could we not try to do something for that? So, I don't have a ton of spare time for effect development these days, unfortunately. But I basically, I reached out to him, and he has, he's always down to do stuff together. He wants to collab all the time. And I think our biggest limiting factor is my time more than anything else, unfortunately. But we chatted and we are jamming on it. And actually, this evening and tomorrow, I'm going to spend some time working on some assets that he provided me,
Uh-huh.
and we're going to try to beat that deadline as best as
Wow,
we
wow,
can.
wow. Okay, guys, definitely go and follow Weird Talk Union so you guys can see what their next project is. I'm personally very excited to see. And I heard that today you're going to be giving us some behind the scenes of how you and Filterdank created this first effect that's on the Weird Talk Union. I'm going to go and try it out right now so you guys can see what the effect is all about. Let's see. Okay. Oops. I'm gonna go with easy. Easy's already
Yeah,
too difficult for me. But all
I
of this.
recommend easy.
Okay. Look at that. Look at that.
So,
Nose pink. Nose pink. Oh,
you got to pick the
look at the
cat.
cutie. This confused me at first because I thought I was supposed to have my tongue out, like mouth. So I was doing a like this, and I was like, "Why isn't
Yeah,
it
yeah,
working?"
yes.
I'm
Good.
terrible at this one. I don't know how to pop the balloon, the
That
bubble.
one is quite difficult.
Ah! They switched
You're
it up
right at
last
the end.
minute.
Right at the end.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Uh-oh.
I only have one life left.
One life left.
But guys, isn't it so cool how there's like this mini games inside? I bet each of these games could be published as its own effect, but they've combined it so that all of these is in a single game. That's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it was the vision that I had going into it was, I want it to be overwhelming. I want you to not even be able to stop and think and realize how many different games are crammed into one effect.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I thought that that would be exciting. I wanted there to be a tight gameplay loop where you're just constantly doing it.
I think maybe, if I'm not wrong, this is the first time I'm seeing an effect like this, like where a bunch of mini games are in one thing in Effect House. So when I first saw that, I was like, "This is a full blown game. This is so it was incredible, and I can't wait to
Well, and
see
a
what you
little
guys."
behind the scenes,
Uh huh.
inside
Uh huh.
inside baseball. I took a trip to visit TikTok last year, and I showed everyone
Yes,
this,
I remember. I remember.
and it was before we had finished it.
Uh
And
huh.
so after that, we actually ran into difficulties with performance, with cramming all that stuff in there and getting it past the tests and submitted. And I think we can talk about that a little bit at the end, also, like we said about crushing assets and
Yeah.
whatnot. But
Yeah.
I'll explain a little more about that
But
later.
is that why Filter Dank was so like, oh my gosh, I had to do so many revisions, make it low
Yeah.
poly. It was such a struggle.
Yep, absolutely. And if you could see the original version, there's some things in there that didn't make it in there, that arguably
Oh,
creepier things or stranger things, but
okay.
cut for performance more than anything
Uh huh.
else.
Uh huh. I'm looking forward to hearing more of the backstory. But today, guys, in this lesson, we will look into how to make a mini game like this, and then so by mini game, like a single segment, like popping the balloon or chopping it, and then later how to put all of those mini games together to create this one big effect, and more on like the performance and optimizations and some stories. So let's get right into it. Anything you want to say before we move on?
No, I think that says it. And I guess I just would preface this with saying I don't intend on showing you exactly how to make one of these, but I'm going to be talking
That's going to be
in
10 hours, guys. 10
broad
hours
strokes.
plus.
Exactly,
Uh-huh.
exactly. But I'm going to be talking in broad strokes and generalities of how I do this, or how all of us do this, really, and
Sounds good.
the approach to doing so.
Okay, let's get started.
So the first thing I want to talk about is not even here, but actually I'm going to bring in a diagram, and this is basically, you may be familiar with this, you may not be, or you may have seen things like this before if you are familiar with game development at all. But basically, this is sort of the gist of when you build a game, there's sort of just a loop of things that happen. You at the beginning, you start the effect or the game, you initialize everything that you need to make the game run, and then you're just in this little loop down here of updating the game, updating the state of the game, checking for input and changing the state of the game based on that, and checking, is the game over now? If it's not, keep looping. And if it is, then handle the win or the loss. And this is sort of just a really general framework for if you have a game, any video game or any micro game. And you may be saying, well, I don't see anything on here about input or about displaying it, or how does this get on the screen? And that's true, I didn't show that here. So instead, actually, here's a slightly more advanced version of the same diagram. But you can see here again, that loop, that main loop over here is what some people refer to as a game driver, right? It's basically this you've got, again, this concept of initializing, and then the concept of the driver that is running in a constant loop. And you may, as an effect house developer, realize that this is actually kind of similar to the start node and the update node that exist in effect house. And in a way, they are very directly paralleled there. I also have this picture here of a cylinder that's usually in a flowchart. That's what we represent the database with, a cylinder. And this says game state. And you can see it has notes that says like time remaining, progress made, etc. And so in your effect, this is going to be, you might have number values, you might have arrays, you might have just different variables that are representing the game state. And so your update loop is doing things to interact with that game state, and your player inputs are doing things to interact with that game state during the update loop. And all of that, whatever is in that game state, reflects what's being rendered on the screen. And so when I say game state, that's not just variables, but that's even the position of objects in your 3D scene or whatnot, right? Those are all part of the state of the game. Because if you were to be writing this in code, like those objects that we get to nicely drag around in the camera view, right? All of that stuff, that really is just state, right? This system knows I have a cube with this texture that's sitting at these coordinates, and there's really underlying code that's moving those things around. So again, with this, you just have that loop going on, and then the player's inputs are coming in and interacting with it. And then at some point, the game ends. Maybe you have a timer running that tells us the game has ended, right? A timer runs and then changes the state to say game over, and then we get down there and we're done. So let's think of one of those micro games that you just saw in the demo of Weird Talk. For example, the one that shows blowing the bubble and the fingers moving up and down and you're trying to pop the bubble. If you imagine that as being one of these instances of this chart, right? We start and we initialize. How do we initialize? We show the person sitting on the lawn. We show the bubblegum bubble and tell it to start inflating and deflating. We show the hand and tell it to start moving up and down. And then we're in that update loop, or sorry, also as part of initializing, we start the timer for however much time you have to get that game done. And then the update loop starts. And the update loop is, again, a more general way of describing what's happening. A lot of the update stuff is happening for you automatically in Effect House. Like the moving the hand up and down is being done by a transit by time node. So you're not explicitly updating the position of the hand. you explained it once, and Effect House is doing the rest of that for you. When the player taps the screen, we handle the input. Maybe that tells the hand to move to the side to try to pop the balloon. And all of that stuff basically is just this in a lot more detail. So if you think about any one of the micro games, you can always break it down into this general flow one way or another. And so let's look at an actual visual graph. So over here, let's get this smaller so we can see the more of the graph. But basically, whoops, getting used to the UI still. After 2 years, I'm still getting used to the UI. So over here, though, you can see at the beginning of this is a subgraph. Okay. Actually, before I go talk about the graph, let me hit play over here. Let me hit the record button, and you can see what this subgraph is. This is a single micro game. It is the Eat Pizza micro game. And so this is just going to make a pizza show up. And every time you tap the screen, you eat a bite of pizza. And you try to tap it enough times to eat the whole pizza before the time runs out. So that's this micro game, and that's all there is to it. Now you can see, again, here's the pieces that correspond to what we talked about on that chart, right? There's the init, there's an init input here, and this is saying, what do you have to do to set up the pizza game to start running? Well, first, we got to keep track of how many bites of pizza have been taken, right? I call that the pizza frame. We're on frame 0 of eating the pizza, and there's, I think, 9 frames of eating it. So we set the pizza frame to 0. We start a transit by time. What is this transit by time doing? I don't know. I haven't looked at this in a while. I think this is making the pizza fly up into the screen. Excuse me. So yes, you can see when this begins, we are making the pizza visible, and we're making it slide up onto the screen and spin around also. That's a little bit of flair. It's not necessary, right? We could just show the pizza there. And in fact, when I first made the effect, I probably just made it turn the pizza on. But then as you get the basics working, you can come back and do this embellishment. And I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But in game development, people refer to that as adding the juice, you know, or just making it more exciting. So here again, though, we came in here, we initialized by setting the pizza frame to 0, throwing the pizza on the screen, making it slide up into there. And then at that point, you're basically ready, right? All you have in this micro game is a pizza that is complete, and then you need to handle taps causing some of the pizza to be removed. All right, so let's come back over here again. There are certain things that aren't used. Don't worry about them yet. But basically, one thing that you do need to think about is that timer, right? So when we start the micro game, we start a timer. Now, I actually am not doing that inside of this graph. That's happening outside of here. But take my word for it. That's part of initializing it, right? We start the game. We start the timer. And you can see, again, if I start this again, you can see in the lower left, there's a timer running. You'll see it right down here, this little clock with wings. It may be small on your screen. But when that runs out of time, we know that the game has ended and it is a loss if you haven't eaten the whole pizza. And so there's this input here for when the timer ends. Let me clear that up. There's an input here called timeout, which happens when the timer runs out. And if we follow that down, we'll see this if is actually just to keep the lines clean. This is a little side tip, by the way. If you ever have lines crossing all over your graph and you want to kind of drag them out of the way, you can throw them into an if that always returns true.
Actually, recently I've been seeing so many fun visual scripting graphs that we were thinking like, oh, we need to have an origami, what's that? Knitting, crocheting with wires contest where people just share photos of their beautifully organized graph, and this is going to be a major hit for that contest. So
I guarantee you I can win that if I show you the Erdl visual graph.
Oh my gosh.
The Wordle clone that I made. It is ludicrous. So don't worry too much. Don't get hung up too much in the details of this graph, but you can see here when the time runs out, okay, it comes down here and it just goes directly to this output actually, which is kind of odd, right? But basically what I'm showing you here, this whole graph we're looking at of the micro game is actually part of a bigger framework. And if we zoom out of here to the main graph, we can see right here, this one chunk is the pizza micro game. And so again, it has when it initializes, it has when it's playing, it has when the time is up, and it has a cleanup step. And then the tapping the screen is handled outside of that node as well, which is here, which is to say when the screen is tapped, tell the pizza game that it's tapped. And then at the end, whether you won before the time was up or whether the time ran out before you ate the pizza, this game will tell the framework back out here, was it a win or a loss? And so that's similar again to down here when we say, did we win the game, handle a win, or handle a loss? So that's the gist of one of these micro games. And I guess, I left out the guts of it, and I'll talk about that really briefly. But basically, anytime that tap happens, we come down here and we do a few things. One is we play the sound of munching, right? And this is another side note. In my experience, and again, I don't necessarily like to give tips like this because I might not be up on what the latest state of Effect House is with the latest versions. Some of my tips, I guess, may be outdated is really what I'm trying to say. But I am always very careful with sounds and with animations to split them out into their own terminal parts of the graph. I don't want to have logic flow through here and then out of the on play, because I find that in some cases that can be unreliable, let's say, or that you can find unexpected behavior. And rather, I think about sound effects and animations as side effects of the actual logic that's happening in my script. And so my approach to triggering them is to have a sequence that just fires off dedicated to them, right? So then this is the sound effect that happens as the first step of handling the tap. And then if I want to get rid of that sound effect, I can get rid of that line and not worry about any of the rest of my actual game logic. Or if I wanted to make it do, some other things when you tap it and then play the sound, it just keeps things a little cleaner and easier to use sequences in some cases to say side effects happen on their own and then continue on with my core logic. And so the core logic here is you tapped, we're going to increase which pizza frame we're on. And this is actually somewhat complex because we change different amounts based on which difficulty setting you're on. Don't worry about the details again there, but just know that's why there's a bunch of extra stuff. And so when you tap, we advance which pizza frame you're on, and then we go update what the pizza looks like based on which frame we're on, which is to say we remove the bits of pizza that you've eaten based on how many times it's been eaten. That's all in this node over here called update pizza parts. And I won't even bother trying to explain this. It's really just kind of going through and saying which parts of the pizza should I show based on which frame we're on. So, Celine, do you have any questions so far on
No,
this?
I think you were great at explaining. I am very curious, however, about the door looking thing on your scene preview up there, because a lot of people
Mhm.
take the approach where they like get a finished animation and they just put it as an MP4, but it seems like you've also made the transition scene inside of Effect House. Are they moving by transit by time when this is complete? This mini game
They
is
are.
completed?
So, and that's a great segue into the next part of talking about this. So the first kind of level of what we're talking about is make a single micro game. Make a game that lets you tap and eat the pizza and tell if you've won or lost. But then the next level is now fit that into a framework that can handle multiple micro games. And what does that framework look like? And to me, it was, okay, imagine it like a stage. The curtains close, the workers go do whatever they need to do behind the curtains to get the next scene set up, and then the curtains open on the next scene. Okay. And so in our case, our scene is we're setting up the pizza. So the curtains close, and then we tell the pizza, start setting up. And then we open the door, and the pizza game is happening. And then when the game ends, win or loss, we close the curtains and tell the pizza game, okay, get out of here. The next game is coming on. So go clean up. And we tell the next game, hey, go set up. And then we open the doors, and now you see a totally different game. And because it was that, I thought it made a lot of sense to have the doors be part of the actual scene. And so they're basically just 2D images. It's one 2D image that I built actually with just the logo on this background, but then I split it into two separate images with transparency so that I could position them there and have them split apart like a door. I could have just as easily made it a single image and just had it vanish or like slide off, but I thought,
this is more cool. This
I wanted
looks
it to
dramatic and like a curtain call, and I love it.
Exactly. Like a curtain call. Also, it's directly inspired by WarioWare. WarioWare games will always do these kind of animations where they'll show, like, in one of them, they'll show, like, you're in an elevator that's going from floor to floor, and then the doors open, and you play the game, and then they close. They have all kinds of similar sort of framing devices like this. And so, to me, I don't know, maybe there's a better way to do it, but this was the first thing that popped in my head was I'll just literally cover the screen, cover the things that are behind it, and then uncover them. And that way you don't see, like, if it's in a partial state or whatever, like, oh, it's putting the pizza in the right position, but it needs to change to the full pizza again. You're not seeing like a partially eaten pizza move here and get all set up and stuff, because that's happening behind the doors.
Okay. I do love the visuals of this, especially how you guys were able to loop in a lot of like the facial textures of the people using it so naturally in the game. Like in a lot of the TikTok games, I see that there's like a whole game running in the background, and then maybe you have a segmentation of a person in the front, or they just put it on the background. But you made it like as a component of the game when you're like, let's say, licking the ice cream or dropping the thing in your eyeballs. Like it's actually making you part of the game, which is one of the reasons why I love this so much. It was insane when I tried it. It feels
So
like you're
I have
part
to give
of
a
that.
lot of credit.
Uh-huh.
I have to give a lot of credit to Filter Dank, Zach, for that, because that's so much of what he does with his effects, right? He loves making weird 3D models and distorting the user's face onto them in strange and delightful ways. And so that I kind of just got for free by having him making the models. But we absolutely, with something like this that is so heavily visual and there's so many assets and we're making strange backgrounds and stuff, it would feel really detached if you're just watching some other character the whole time. And then there's nothing personal about your video.
Yeah.
But when we take your face and put it on the character, all of a sudden it's like, this is deranged.
Yes.
And it's a lot of fun.
Yes. And that's why I feel like even though it is inspired by WarioWare, or it looks like a lot of the look at the notes. It looks like wow, that's a web right there. If I was Fly and I flew into that, I would not be able to escape. Yeah, but
that reaction was great.
Yeah, but I was saying how even though it has a similar format to like existing retro games, it gave it that edge, and I feel like it's something that we haven't seen before, where they take your facial data and you're part of the game. So extra props to that. And we have some.
Well, and if you recall, also, even back on Dungeon Crawler, right? I had the same thought back then. I was like, the user has to be involved in this somehow, and if you notice, when you start Dungeon Crawler, you have to pick, am I going to play as a wizard or as like a fighter? But your face is on the characters. And then when you play the game, your face is in the corner, right?
Yes.
Because I didn't want you just playing this game and not being able to be involved in it. And I wanted it to be almost like evocative of when you see people streaming games on other platforms, right? When they're in the corner and they're playing the game, and you get to see their reaction to things that are happening. So I'm sorry, I interrupted you though. You were starting to say something.
No, no, no. I'm tapping or using horns.
Oh, that was another thing. That one I did screen taps and I did hand gestures.
Totally a
But yeah, there you
wizard.
are. You're the wizard.
Look at that. Look at that. But love the design choices and also the visual scripting. But going back to our project, we did get a couple questions. Synth
Let me
Groove
take a
AI
look.
Beats is asking, what are some of the things that we should not overuse because it causes a slowdown? Any tips, please?
Oh, that is a tough question, and in fact, uh, I was intending to get back to that, but I see that
Ooh, okay, then we'll
we might
cover
run out
it.
of time. Let me real quick talk about this, and then we'll jump to the performance things
That is
because
absolutely
yeah,
totally
this
fine.
this shouldn't take too. We don't have to go into a lot of detail. All I want to say here is, yes, there is a spider web here, and if you saw previously, right, there was the pizza game in the other project I just showed you, and it just went, when it inits, it goes to the pizza game and inits it, and then when the timer's up, it hits the pizza game and says time's up, and then repeat. But now you can see there are 8 different games here. But basically, I made this. You can call it an API, right? You can call it an interface to a game, to a micro game. A micro game always has an init, a play, a timeout, a cleanup, a tap, and it's fed in the difficulty and the speed. Because one thing you might not have noticed if you were just watching earlier is as you win games, the game speeds up as well. Whenever you lose one, the game slows down a little bit. And so I have this thing called the time ratio, which is to say, like, how many how many seconds, how many real seconds should I convert 1 second into? And so the time ratio gets, or maybe I did that backwards. But anyway, the time ratio changes, which means all the timers that are used by these micro games get impacted by that, so that they speed up. And similarly, the difficulty, easy, medium, or hard, is fed into here so that the games can make adjustments based on that. For example, with the pizza, when you are in easy mode, tapping takes bigger chunks out of the pizza. You eat it faster. Or in the bubble gum game, the bubble gum bubble is smaller and harder to hit with that finger when you're on a more difficult.
What? I didn't even know that. So in the
Yeah.
pizza game, how many different versions of pizza do you have? Do you have a
The
lot of
pizza.
pizza assets?
No, they're all the same pizza asset, but the way it works is, like I said, there were 9 frames of pizza where it like takes a chunk out each time. But if you're on easy, tapping once takes like 3 frames away, right? So you only have to tap like
Oh.
3 or 4 times to eat the
Uh-huh.
pizza on easy, but on hard you have to tap it like all 9 times. But other ones like the ice cream, there's a different flavor of ice cream depending on which difficulty you're on, and you have to tap more. Or on the one where you're
What?
drinking.
Guys, we're learning about so many Easter eggs. I didn't know that there were like different flavors of ice cream
Yeah,
and
and on the shake one, you have to, like, the straw gets thinner. There's a different straw depending on the difficulty level, and so you have to tap faster to drink the shake on the harder difficulty because the straw is harder to slurp the shake through.
wow. Joe, I also know that you are a big Easter egg fan. You like to
Yeah,
include Easter eggs on your projects. Can you
I
give us a
do.
little bit of a sneak peek on other projects that you've included with Easter eggs?
Well, I'll tell you, for a little while, I invented a conduct, so to speak, or like a requirement that as soon as Effect House introduced pet effects, I said every effect I make will support pets as like an Easter
Me
egg,
too, me
and
too.
and
Oh,
I did
every
that
single
I
effect?
did that for a while, and then I immediately stopped.
Uh-huh.
But like an example of that was, I think, the Halloween face-off effect, which is like you open your mouth and your face comes off and exposes a skeletal face. If you have pets in the background there, they have little skull masks on. Just things like that. I love little. There you go. I think I think that was that a
Where
content
where
warning
where
on
are
that?
my three cats when I need them? Literally, they're bugging me. They're with me and constantly chasing me. But the one time I need them for an effect, they're not here.
Yeah. I think that the one with the dotted lines that come out of your eyes supports cats as well,
Oh.
if I recall. But I would love to. I don't want us to run out of time before I answer that question. So all I wanted to say about the graph over here was every one of these micro games has a standard interface, and so what I ended up with is the larger graph that maintains the doors closing and like your lives and the timers and stuff has all of these switches basically that just it keeps track of which micro game you're on. It picks the next one randomly. It's never the same one twice in a row. And all it does, if we can jump over to the effect house window, all it does here is do a switch based on am I on game 0 through 7. So the logic that was going to tell it to clean up comes up here and instead says which game were we on? Go tell that one to clean up. Which game are we starting? Go tell that one to start, and so on. If you tap the screen, it hands that input to the game that's actively being played. That's all it is. So I just wanted to kind of say this is how you tie all those together into this one larger game. Now, to answer the question about performance, what we found impacts performance the most that you need to avoid is actually asset related. It's about 3D meshes. The thing that got us with the performance was that we just had too many 3D models that had too many vertices, and that's what FilterDank had to come back and revise. And in fact, we had this really complex, disturbing. This is what I alluded to earlier. For the licking ice cream game, we had this bizarre model that was like inspired by like a Junji Ito comic. It was this big, disturbing tongue that would flap around when you were licking the ice cream.
Oh my gosh.
And it was so awesome. And we had to cut it because it just had too much complexity. It was one of the things that we cut out. Similarly, all of my images and all of my sounds, I crushed them down as much as possible before I put them. I don't rely on Effect House to crush it. Actually, shout out to, I want to say, I apologize if I'm wrong, but I want to say it was Eddie in 3D that gave this tip over a year ago to use an app called Crushy that is free, that allows you to really compress down your graphics into much smaller files. And so I'll go use Crushy, set my quality level how I want, and bring these assets down. And then when I import them in here, they are, just really small PNGs. If I can actually find any, where are we? Textures. So you can see there are a ton of textures in here. And what I do is I just, get them as small as I can. I figure out ways to have as few of them as possible. And you can see each one of these on the right. You can see like this is 9 kilobytes, right? That's very small. 9 kilobyte. Sometimes I have to try a couple of different things back to back. Sometimes I'll try assembling an image from multiple pieces with transparency. And sometimes it's easier, like with these cat posters, it turned out it was easier just to have a separate poster for each one of these rather than trying to assemble them. For the pizza, for the ice cream, you can see like here's the ice cream. It's not one image. It's actually a bunch of individual shreds of ice cream that are all shown on the screen at the same time. And then as you lick and remove them, we just make one of those layers invisible. The pizza works similarly. The pizza is actually in a bunch of chunks, and each one of these is like 7 or 8 kilobytes. So that's my biggest trick as far as crushing stuff down is just think about the limited resources and figure out clever ways around it. But crush your assets down, use lower quality assets. It doesn't matter. People are flying through there. Think about which ones of your assets need to be high quality and which ones don't. If you're going to show something very large on the screen for a long time, think about putting a little higher quality on that. But for something like a little scrap of pizza that flies up and gets eaten, like that could be low res and no one would care.
Good hack. Did you want to talk more about how you were able to combine all these mini games? I feel like I caught you off track with the
Yeah, no,
door opening and closing.
that's all I was getting at here is like the overall logic is the top level graph that you see here, and this is it's funny because remember the remember this chart. This applies to the micro games, but this also applies to the overall game, right? We start the whole effect and we initialize what do we need? We need how much, which actually in this case, we initialize by putting you on the menu. You choose a difficulty. But after you go past that, we initialize the game based on the difficulty. We set the time dilation. We set, you have 4 lives right now. We set up all that stuff. We close the doors. And then we start this whole loop. And this whole loop for the overall game is just pick a random micro game. All right, so this right here, this whole section right here you're seeing is that initialization. So that's why it's this long horizontal chain of you started recording, that starts the game, and we do all the things we need to do to set up, like setting your score to 0, setting your lives to 4, picking a random game, and whatnot. And then over here is where we get into that loop of the overall game, which is just every time we do it, we go say, close the doors, go tell the previous game, if there was one, to go clean up, go tell the next game to initialize itself, and then we start running that next game, handing the taps in there, handing the timer in there. So when the timer runs out, we start the timer over here, and when it runs out, we tell it, hey, time's up. Go tell the game that's currently playing that time is up. And then whatever game is playing will let us know if it won or lost. That comes all the way back over here. And we handle, if you win, we increase your score. If you lose, we take away one of your lives and we show that animation and play that sound effect. And then regardless of those, we then go say, is the game over? If so, close the doors and get ready to show the final score. But if not, go back and loop again, pick another micro game and do the whole thing again. So you can see how there's a similar structure both at the small level and then at the bigger level. That's really all game development is, if you ask me. That's why I started with those diagrams.
Florentia is asking, how do you update the game in this effect? You use a lot of mini games, so you only update the games that are not complete or all the games?
That's an excellent question. So in this particular effect, it's done in such a way that, it's all just 2D and tap-based interaction. That's one thing I left out earlier as well, is that for this whole effect, you'll notice every single one of the micro games uses the same interaction. You can just tap the screen. There's no swiping. There's no holding. It's always about taps. One game will be about tap as fast as you can. One game will be about tap at the right time. One will be about tap on the right thing. But they're all just taps. And so that made it really easy to have this consistency of these micro games. And that also meant that there's not a lot of state going on other than, again, things like the hand moving up and down or the meter moving up and down on the baguette chop. And so when this init comes in, that's when the micro game is responsible for showing itself. All of these you can see on the left are actually not visible by default. And so they have to show themselves behind the curtain. And then they have to start any one of those transits or timers that they rely on. And then when they receive that signal, hey, the time's up, they're responsible for doing that cleanup also. And also, actually, when they receive this cleanup signal, they're responsible at that point for stopping any animations they had and tearing themselves down so that they're not showing there when the doors open again. And so there's no actual updates being done in the micro games when they're not the ones that are running, right? Because they're not responsible for checking for taps, and they're not using an update node within them. So in a way, I've abstracted out that update loop to be the responsibility of this upper level, and it's just telling those micro games when they need to do what. It's orchestrating it.
Sounds amazing. August just did a session called Subgraph Secrets where he taught us like how to put stuff into subgraphs and then to take out some parts such as the update or the checking in this part that will allow you to basically create very amazing use cases like this. So if you guys are interested in learning more about subgraphs, definitely go check out that episode. But I feel like August would be very, very proud of you, Joe, for this project.
August is the August is very good, and August is actually the unofficial silent member of Weird Talk Union. August is sort of our
Oh.
patron.
Uh-huh. A little
I'll
typical
tell you now.
counsel.
I'll tell you here and now. A little again inside baseball. No one knows this, but August is actually the one who inspired the baguette chop micro game that we made.
Wow. How did it inspire you? Did you just see August chop a baguette, or did he come up with the
Uh,
idea?
August had an idea of someone chopping a baguette, and then Filter Dank and I ended up running with that idea and doing something with it.
That is hilarious. Oh my gosh. Okay, I think we had amazing backstories today, and I think people are super excited that you were able to share this. Thank you, Joe and Filter Dang, for sharing all of your valuable insights. Florentia is saying, amazing, with again, like 4 exclamation marks. And Heather Haley Capods is saying, it's like the most extreme advanced game possible, and she's absolutely loving it. Oh,
Haley,
Cloves, our another ambassador from Brazil, is saying, "Bro, I just entered the live and saw this. Amazing!" Aha.
so one thing Haley asked if my computer ever crashed while building this, and I will say no, but
Oh.
but back in the day, I made Dungeon Crawler, and that's a much older version of EH,
Mhm.
and there were huge performance issues back then. And I'm not saying that they're all completely resolved, but it was much worse back then. And Dungeon Crawler was the most complex thing I had built yet
Uh
in
huh.
EH.
Uh
I
huh.
think I will go. I'm not tooting my own horn. I think Dungeon Crawler is the most complex effect that had been made at the time that it was made.
I
I don't
agree with
think
you.
anyone had
I
done
agree with
anything
you. Yep.
more difficult than that.
Mhm.
And so it was not crashing my computer, but it was getting to the point that dragging a line from one node to another would sometimes take almost 1 minute. And
A
I
whole
was up
minute?
until, yes, and I was up past 2 a.m. because I was trying to get it done for the a competition.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was literally dozing off while waiting for the lines to connect between nodes.
But actually, I was talking about this with Jonathan Hunt, who was on the Wednesdays live, and we were talking about his draw a circle challenge. And at the time, there wasn't like an asset library for drawing on the screen, so he had to invent his mechanism. But now it's just one click and add, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, do you
Yeah,
know how long I spent to
yeah.
make this mechanism?" So the advancement of Effect House is actually kind of
Oh,
jarring.
yeah.
Like we're adding new features every day, and I'm like, what? We release this feature, even though I work here. Like the speed at
I'm
which
telling
the
you,
thing is improving is like insane.
I could spend, I wish we had more time because I could spend another hour telling you about how I do
Joe, time is a
things with
social
material
construct.
graph.
Jonathan episode was 2 hours. Let's go. I'm excited to hear more.
Oh, I thought we were on
Seriously.
your timetable. I got plenty of time here.
It's Friday. Work is ending. Let's go. Let's go.
Well,
Because one thing I wanted to ask, which blew me off my mind, was like how in the world did you make Wordle? That game is insane. Let me show you guys.
oh my gosh.
Joe made a full-on functioning Wordle inside of Effect House. Look at this. And you could put in like real combination of words. Like these are actual words and they will cross-check if this word is the word. And I'm like, how did you do this? You are kidding me.
Not only are they real words, it was actually using the Wordle dictionary.
Let me try. Let me actually show you
Okay.
guys.
Okay.
But I'm going to embarrass myself because I'm so bad at Wordle. But let's try. I'm gonna try with pride. Okay. Some words in there. Um,
Let's see. We got an E at the end. Oh, I think I know it.
you
I
know
think I
it.
know
You
it.
know it.
I bet I know it.
While you were making this, you're
Oh
just like
no, I
so
don't. I don't
proficient.
know it.
Okay, we
I thought
have
it had an A in it, but it doesn't.
we have an SIR and an E. Okay,
How about
so
how about rinse?
rinse. Okay, let me.
Yeah, I think rinse.
Oh, you got it! Good job. High five. Virtual five.
High five.
Yeah.
So It's one thing about this is there are so many words in the dictionary that the chance of getting it correct on the first one is something like 0.4% or
Uh-huh.
something. And of course, the king of TikTok games, Journey Home, somehow immediately did it within like a day of me
Oh my
releasing it.
gosh. Oh my gosh. Of course. Yesterday, actually, Jonathan was talking about, yeah, so I have a couple tips on making a good effect. Number one, the leveling system has to be good. So people have
Mhm.
to feel good about themselves playing, but not achieve the full score. So they feel like, oh, yeah, this is a dynamic, adventurous play. I want to share it. But also have that, like, top level, really difficult to achieve for people like King of TikTok games. And
Mhm.
I love
Mhm.
how he's being mentioned in all of our
Oh
creators.
yeah, yeah. He's been a booster of all of
Uh
ours
huh.
for so long. It's the best. But I would say also you asked a bit about Easter eggs earlier. There is one Easter egg I was expecting him to find and no one else. Uh, that still has not been, as to my knowledge, no one has managed to do it.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
and that is there is a kill screen in Weird Talk Microware. If you reach too high of a score, it's just like Pac-Man where there's a kill screen
Uh huh.
that
Uh
stops
huh.
you from proceeding any further.
King of TikTok games, we're officially putting in a challenge for you. You didn't know this existed, so let's see how long it takes for you to uncover this. I'm gonna personally send this message to at TikTok King of TikTok games, so we'll see how long it takes you. But also, oh, I don't know if I'm able to spoil it, but I know that there's also another secret in the AI image card generation that you mentioned earlier as well. So, for those of you who haven't found that before, go check it out.
There's actually, so I've been meaning to at some point look into this, but in another one of my AI effects, I made around the same time as this, I made one that makes an AI tarot card of you. Um, this one had a rare, it's random which
Guys,
card you
remember
get.
the rare AI trend where people would put like spoons and cups and everything on their face to get rare AI?
But there was one in here that you're supposed to be able to randomly get that was sort of a joke and it had a screen effect. And I've never seen it, and I've actually never been able to get it myself, which makes me wonder if I accidentally put a bug in before I shipped it because I know it worked when I was testing it. So I need to look at that project at some point.
I was going to say, how epic would it be if I'm able to get that on screen, but I just got mania, so I think it's saying, hey, Celine, you're silly. So, but everybody's saying this is epic. Totally, you're a pioneer.
Well, I
Wow, that is
appreciate that.
amazing. The amount of patience and innovation needed. Cloves is saying a whole dictionary inside of Effect House.
Yeah, I'll actually show you that right now. If you want to pop
Yes.
back over to my Effect House screen.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to put on the preview because this project is so old that the images are all flipped upside down. I'd have to update it to the latest version. But what I will say is this is the whole main graph for the Wordle game. It doesn't look like a
That
lot, right?
seems that seems
This is
super simple. I'm
this is the whole
shocked.
game. Yeah. But if you come down in here a little closer, there's this node called exists, and this is the one that has. So Wordle, the way with the original Wordle worked was that there was one dictionary of a few thousand words that can be the target, but then there's a larger dictionary of like tens of thousands of words or 10,000 something words that is all of the words that are valid. Because I don't know if you noticed this, if you type in a nonsense word, it won't even let you put it
Mm-hmm.
in this
Mm-hmm.
effect. And so, yes, there's a whole dictionary in here in this node. And the way that I'm storing words is
When you
that
were
each
making this game, did we have strings? String variables?
no, no. So the way that I'm storing words is that each word is actually a number, and it's basically Wordle. They're 5 letter words, and there are 26 letters in the alphabet. And so if you treat A as 0 and B as 1, and so on, all the way up to Z being 25, then you can encode a 5-letter word as a number in base 26, right? You take the first letter of the word is multiplied times 26 to the fourth, and the second one is multiplied by 26 to the third, and so on, and you add them all up and you
I
get a
can't
big
even
number.
see that on the screen. What the heck?
Yeah, I think that I might crash Effect House right now. It seems it's not liking this. It's beach balling my Mac now. Let's see, can I even
For
zoom in?
granted, are you also streaming while you're opening up this massive, gigantic file on the same PC?
Oh, here we go. It's zooming in now.
It's loading. It
But
was
yes,
so funny because before I moved on to this PC setup, I was also streaming and opening up files, and then my streams would get so laggy. Like, people would make fun of me and put fire emojis and saying Celine's key catchphrase is saying, "Excuse me, my PC is slow," with like a fire emoji. So people would roast me so hard every time that
Oh
happened.
no, that is the worst. So you can see, even though it's being choppy right now, you can see that this is a gigantic array of vector 4s, and each vector 4 is just holding 4 words in it. So this is a common trick I've used in so many of my effects, including Dungeon Crawler, which is just to use vector 4s as a way of holding 4 numbers together. And so I do a lot, again, inspired by old retro systems, I do a lot with bit mapping, where I will crush a whole bunch of state into numbers and store those in numeric variables, rather than have, instead of, why should I have 10 Boolean variables if I can just have a single number variable that holds all 10 of those flags for me? And yeah, this is just, I wish that there was a quicker way for me to get to the top, but this is just a gigantic array that holds every possible word in the dictionary in alphabetical order, encoded into these base 26 numbers. And
you're insane.
Basically, if I could get up to the top here, let me try to zoom out again. But if I could get up to the top here, you'll see the actual logic is that I'm actually doing, if I recall correctly, I think I'm doing a binary search through this dictionary. So you put in a word, we convert that to a number, and then we zero in on it. So by doing a binary search, and if you're not familiar with a binary search, this is a computer science, computer programming concept, and beyond the scope of me explaining it right now. But nonetheless, there are existing search algorithms for things like this, and a binary search is one of them. And basically, it allows you to really quickly, in a small number of operations, zero in on whether that word is in this dictionary or not. Oh my gosh, this is so excruciating to scroll up here, isn't it? I'm trying, y'all. I really am trying to get up there and let you see it. But oh, look, we're getting close. We're at item 200.
Haley is asking, vector 4s didn't realize that this was an array. How many values are in this array?
I'd have to scroll all the way to the other end to tell you that. So that might not happen.
That might take 3,000 years.
Actually, I think we might have a number in here that tells us that, right? We have, okay, so here's the actual logic up at the top of this array. But yeah, so you can see here, what happens is this subgraph gets fed in a target number to check, and it gets an execution to say, go check it. And so we just, I've implemented a search algorithm here that is just looking through this array to see if your number is in it or not. And oh wow, I am destroying Effect House right now. And so you might ask, how did I get this array in here with thousands of words in it? And I would tell you, I did not put it in by hand.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
You could go, make array and just go keep hitting that plus and manually typing in numbers. But no, I actually wrote some code to analyze the data file, the graph file, and I wrote a script that would go in and actually cheat. So don't tell Effect House that I did that.
Don't tell anyone from Effect House, guys, okay?
And I don't actually encourage you to do it. And in fact, it was difficult for me to do it, and I don't even know if it would still work today with the latest version. Look at this. I'm breaking Effect House. So I've put too much data in there, and it actually, you can see it causes problems sometimes with Effect House itself, just because this is, again, it's just like the old days where you put so many nodes in there and it slows down horribly. In this case, there's just too much data in my visual scripting graph. And so I have two of those. I have one here for the dictionary of all possible words, and I have another one that's a smaller one for the dictionary of all target words that the game can use.
Cloves is asking, how did you store words in a bunch of numbers?
Yeah, so let's do an example. Actually, this might make it more obvious what I meant. I was describing that earlier, but basically, if you were to say, let's get a text editor here. Let's make this big enough for everyone to see. So what's a good word? Give me a 5-letter word.
5-letter word. Oh my gosh, you're putting me on the spot.
We'll use rinse. That was the one that you had,
yes.
Right? Okay. So what I was saying earlier is that if you imagine encoding every letter of the alphabet in base 26, right? So an A is 0, a B is 1, all the way up to a Z being 25. Then what you have up here for rinse is actually you want the first letter to be times 26 to the 4th power, and then 26 to the 3rd power, 26 to the 2nd power, 26 to the 1st power, and then just times 26 to the 0th power, which is 1. And I know I'm going into a math lesson here, and this is very weird, but this is the kind of stuff that I do for fun. I've always been into math. And so what this means, though, is like for the word rinse, okay, R is the 18th letter of the alphabet. Okay, don't ask why I know that off the top of my head, but that means R equals 17. I is going to be 8. N is going to be 13. S is going to be 1 later than R, so that's going to be 18. And E is going to be 4, right? E is the 5th letter of the alphabet. So
I'm honestly very impressed that you were just able to whip out and you remembered all these numbers.
I might be wrong. I'm doing this off the top of my head, but I do a lot of puzzles. So what you have here is times 26 to the 4th, times 26 to the 3rd, times 26 to the 2nd, times 26 to the 1st, and times 26 to the 0, and you're going to add those all up. So I can't do those numbers in my head, but basically 26 times 18 is 468. 26 times 26 times 13 is 788. This, I feel like now we're moving into number file territory. If you all are YouTube fans, number file is full of stuff like this. Times 8.
Do you ever get inspired by watching videos from Numberphile or other people who's discussing math?
I get inspired by everything in my life that I like, and math is something I love. So yes, absolutely. And so this is going to be 7768592, and then this is just 4. And so if we add all of these together, plus 140608 plus 8788 plus 468. Again, I might have made a mistake somewhere here, but this is the concept. So now you have rinse is 7918460. And this number, you can see it's 7.9 million, all right? Let's say, what if we had ZZZZZ? That's going to be the biggest possible number that we can make. Well, we know that that's going to be 25 times 26 to the 4th plus blah, blah, blah. But actually, I'll tell you a trick about math is that this is actually going to be the same as 26 to the 5th minus 1. because 26 to the 5th would be A, A. And when you subtract 1 from that, you get Z, 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 Z. I know I'm going way in the weeds here. But anyway, let's just look at this real quick. 26 to the 5th minus 1 is 1188135. Now, if I'm trying to do something like this, I will look at this. What is the maximum number I can end up with? And the maximum number for this encoding is 11.8 million. And I know that 11.8 million fits into a number in Effect House. Effect House numbers have a precision that actually goes way past this. And so I know that I can store every single one of these values in a single number and not worry about losing accuracy, losing precision. Like if you were to lose precision, and what I mean by losing precision is like, if your software maybe can't represent this, right? Maybe it's going to round this to that number. That would mean you can't use this system because multiple of your words will end up getting crushed to the same number. But because Effect House's numbers have enough precision that they can store this accurately, I know that I can represent every 5-letter word in a single number in here. And so to give you, though, like another illustrative example, if this rinse is this number, then if I add 1 to that number, that's going to give me that. I basically added 1. You can think of this as being like the ones place in a 5-digit number. If I add 1 to it, I'm adding 1 to this bottom one. And similarly, right, if you were to subtract some, I can't believe you're indulging me in going all the way into the weeds on this, but
no, people are loving it. Haley is saying, how many I love this. I could watch Joe discuss math all day. Cloves also saying me too. And then Cloves is saying that's crazy good. I love math too. I follow a lot of YouTubers that showcase stuff in shaders using math. Seeing this is actually like watching a good show. So keep going.
So all I was showing here is you could think of this just like with the numbers we're used to, which are in base 10, right? If you're counting 17 and you're adding 1, you go to 18. You add 1, you go to 19, and then you add 1. You don't go to 1, 0, right? Like 19 doesn't go to 10. 19 goes to 20 because the 9 hits a 10, becomes a 0 again, and adds 1 to the next column. And you can see the same thing down here, right? If I add 1 to RINRZ, the Z rolls over to an A, and the R gets 1 added to it and becomes an S. And just because we're behaving in a different base, right? Each one of these numbers, each one of these characters here is a digit, right? But it's a base 26 digit ranging from A to Z, rather than a base 10 digit ranging from 0 to 9. And so you can see when you convert these back into base 10, which we're familiar with, adding 1 here is equivalent to adding 1 here, and adding 4 here is equivalent to adding 4 here. So rinsa becomes rinse, and if you add 1 more, it becomes rinsef. And so this is how I crushed all those words into numbers, because we didn't have the concept of strings in Effect House at the time.
Now, guys, we do have strings, and maybe it would be easier to store information, luckily.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if the strings, I don't know what string functions we have. I do know when strings was first.
We do have like append and like breaking apart, so it should be much easier, hopefully.
The things that I would need are, I need to break it apart, right, to get the different letters in it, and I need to be able to compare it to another one and say, is this the same as this?
I think you should be able to do all of those.
Even then, I would probably still code this way.
That is true. That is a lot of information, and this seems like a very useful method.
So the Coal Sweeper is another good example of this, though.
Yes.
Right. So if you've seen Coal Sweeper, it's a clone of Minesweeper. Can you show it real quick?
Yep, let me bring it up.
And
guys,
so
Coal Sweeper, you know, like when you buy a new PC and they have they give you this default game.
So I made this as a Christmas effect, But it's just Minesweeper, just rethemed to be gifts with coal instead of spaces with mines. It's gift packages, and you're trying to avoid the coal. And you can see that this is a grid of 9 by 9. So there are 81 spaces on the grid, and we have to keep track of, I think there's 9 or 10 pieces of coal that are randomly laid out in this grid. And so the question becomes, well, how do you store that? And the answer is I crush it into numbers. I basically said, okay, if I have the whole map and I want to know for every square on the map, is there a piece of coal there or not? That is a flag of true or false, or which is 1 or 0. And I basically just said, okay, for every position on the grid in order, that is 1 digit of a big binary number. And so that entire map there, the locations of all the coal, just gets stored into 2 integers in Effect House. And the reason it's 2 is because with 81 positions to care about, there are 2 to the 81 different possible values for that entire map. And 2 to the 81, that's a very large number. That is too large to fit into a single number with exact precision. And this is what I was talking about earlier, where if you have 2 to the 81, small changes to that number won't be picked up, right? Like you can even see it here. Like look at my calculator here.
So big.
2 to the 81 is 2.417851639229258 E24. E24 means followed by 24 zeros. But the fact is that number doesn't have 24 zeros there. This number doesn't end in a 0. But because we don't have the precision of all those digits, we've just chopped them off and just kept track of it's about this size. It's about this order of magnitude, or is this order of magnitude. It's about this number. This is as much precision as you have. And it's the same problem in Effect House, right? Effect House will not store all of the digits of that number if it's this large. But Effect House will store all of the digits of that number if it's this large. And if you store 2 numbers that size, that's equivalent to storing 1 this size. And so all I did was break that map up into an upper and lower portion and store it in 2 numbers. So that entire Coal Sweeper map is just one big bitmap stored in 2 numbers. And then similarly, there's another pair of numbers that tell you whether or not you have already exposed that space on the map, right? Because every space is either unexposed or exposed. So same kind of idea there.
Joe, I think you're capturing the heart of our audiences, because people are saying before they were listening to it like a radio, but now they've completely closed their laptop and moved it aside and 100% focusing on this. Clove said, I was finishing an effect, but I closed Effect House and my attention is 100% now here. So amazing.
Since we extended, I'll talk about one more thing that's directly related to what I just described.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my favorite tricks, and I think I saw Cloves might have mentioned this as well earlier or not, but I thought someone might have mentioned it. I made a new effect recently called Chomp, and it is you play against an AI. It was based on a video I saw on TikTok. And so I posted my video about Chomp in response to this video that someone made about the actual, the game Chomp. And I think I might have destroyed my Effect House. It doesn't seem to be wanting to load the preview anymore.
I think it's because you're using your camera to load to the streaming, but I can show it on my phone.
Oh no! I actually think I need to restart it because I think I did it when I opened Erdl by accident.
Oh, okay, sounds good. But in the meantime, guys, this is actually perfect timing because look, I was able to finally find a cat.
Oh.
And I got them to use this. So I've been waiting to show this off. Look, this is me with my face falling off, and this is my cat.
I love it. I love it.
So, and
Yeah, I
look,
tried to get everyone on the Discord to agree we will all make cats supported in all of our effects, but I don't think it
yes.
caught on. I saw a few people did it.
Guys, on the Discord channel, we even have a special Discord section just for pets. So why don't we have more effects that support pets? Personally, for me, anytime I do like a face effect or something, that tracks your head, I always include a cat version. I always.
As you should.
And also, it's really good for marketing because people sometimes like try your effect and then be like, whoa, this works on cats. And sometimes your effects blow up because people are like, I can't believe this works on cats. So a little hidden edge over here. But also,
All right.
guys, make sure that today, every day, we do a little bit of a mini quest to check your participation to say, hey, I've attended this course. For today's little mission, it will be to try out the Weird Talk Unions effect and post it on the forums. You know where to find us. We've shown it to you guys 100 times, but let me show it once more. If you go to effecthouse.forum. Let me share my screen. Also, guys, do you appreciate this live, laugh, lerp? I uploaded it so you can use it as your background saver. You're welcome. But this was, I think, a funny comment that Florentia made last time. So thank you, Florentia, for the inspiration. But if you go over to the Crash Course page, you'll be able to find today's section here at the very end. Go try the Weird Talk Union effect and post a video of you using it, and we'll count it as attendance. So definitely go check it out. But I'm going to share Joe's page now.
Also, my cat's been behind me on the couch the whole time. I thought I would bring her up to say
Joe,
hello.
how many cats do you have? Do you have two?
I have two cats.
Yeah, because we were talking, and I think me, you, Haley, Florentia was having a little like side conversation on the chat about like, wow, is having a cat the secret to becoming good at Effect House? Because Florentia also has two.
I think it helps. So this is the game Chomp. You might have seen this on my TikTok already. But basically, it's just the concept is there's this bar of chocolate. It is made of smaller little pieces. It's a grid. In the bottom left, there's a poison piece. You and the opponent or the AI are taking turns chomping, and whoever is forced to eat the final poison piece loses. And so the way that it works is you pick a space, and when you click it, you chomp everything above and to the right of it. So like if I were to click right here, for instance, it eats all of that, and then the AI eats something, and repeat, and we go back and forth. Now, the first thing you might immediately notice about this, if you look, there's no chocolate bar in the scene at all. All there is the 2D camera that has the brain and the words next to it.
Where's
and
the
the glow
chocolate?
around the brain. The chocolate is not rendered as images. There's no texture. Well, actually, that's a lie. There's a texture here for the chocolate, but it's not anywhere in the scene. It's being done in the material graph. And the way that works is basically just the material graph is fed in information about how big the grid of chocolate is, where it should be positioned on the screen, and where all the chomps have been taken out of it. Basically, like for each row, how far to the left has it been chomped so far? And then that's just the responsibility of the material editor. The material graph here is to just take those numbers and know how to render this chocolate bar on the screen. And so this is really, really a lot closer to what I was showing at the beginning with those old style retro gaming, like game dev, where you are basically rendering everything on the screen in a loop based on the current state of the data, rather than using these more modern things like having objects that you can move around and whatnot. It's a very low level, and very efficient in a lot of cases way of doing it. Yes, there's the video. There's the video that it was inspired by. I don't even know who this TikToker is. It just showed up in my FYP one day.
Is this the original game that this creator came up with, or?
No, no, no. It's actually like a math problem. Like it's like
Oh.
the question is, it's a game theory thought experiment about, is there a perfect way to play this such that you will always win?
Mm.
And basically, yes, there is, but it's very difficult to calculate. So like theoretically, you can say yes, there is definitely a perfect way to always win, but actually calculating it is much more difficult. And so like I could have made this AI really brutally hard, right? And if I were to like, because for small sizes of the chocolate bar, you can just say what are all the best moves and just have that programmed in there, and you can make it so that the AI was unbeatable if you wanted to. But
Wow.
I wanted people to feel like it was tough but beatable.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And so like to that conceit, right? Like I posted the video saying I can't beat the AI. That's a lie. I can beat the AI.
But
But you
that's
always see
what you
these
gotta
videos
do.
going
This game
around,
is
right?
impossible.
Exactly. You always see those viral videos where someone's like being so stupid intentionally, and then everyone in the comments just ripping into them. Um, and that's what happened with this as well. People are like, I can do it on the first try. And people all were stitching it or duetting it or
Mhm.
whatever. So, but yeah, the main point here, and again, you could do an entire deep dive project, or sorry, a deep dive presentation into this. I'm not going to do it right now, obviously, but is this concept that you don't have to rely on the scene and the objects. You can come up with clever ways to get a lot of impact out of the material graph by rendering most of your elements there based on data instead.
Sounds good. Joe, it has been a wonderful hour 40 with you. You've taught us so much, and I was excited to see every single one of your projects. It feels like everybody on the chat also learned so much. So, thank you so much for coming on the stream and sharing your valuable knowledge with us. You should come back again anytime you're welcome. Want to hear more behind the scenes or Easter eggs on your project? So, just message me. Hey, put
All
the
right.
live on. I'm going today.
I appreciate you. Thank you for having me. And thank you to everyone in the chat. I love seeing you all there. I apologize for the times where I get very rambly, but I just have so many thoughts on all of this that
Mhm.
sometimes it's hard to organize them.
Yeah, sounds good. Guys, it was such a pleasure meeting all of you, and definitely go check out the forums. Today's challenge is using the Weird Talk Union effect and putting it on the forum. So do that. Go check out Joe's channel, go check out Filter Dink's channel, and we'll see you back for the graduation ceremony. Congratulations, everyone, for completing the course. Originally, the graduation ceremony was scheduled for next Monday, but I want to give you guys more time because I know it's a lot of material. So we're hoping to have it by the end of this month. So the 31st of May is also a Friday. So we'll give you a little time until then. We'll upload the new updated schedule for the graduation ceremony we'll send it via email and on the forum so you guys will not miss it. But definitely don't forget to go do the little quest, and I'm excited to see all of you. Thank you, Joe, for joining. I hope everyone has a good Friday. Have a great weekend, guys. TGIF.
Bye.
Bye. the stream is officially